The following is a class on Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, Chapter 9, Text 245, given by His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj, recorded on February 15th, 1997, in Mumbai, India.
Appearance day of SRIPAD MADHVACARYA, we would like to speak briefly about this very great Acharya, who is the prominent personality of the Madhva Sampradaya, in which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally chose to receive initiation within, and thus by his great mercy we have all been connected to the super illustrious acharyas of this line. Madhvacharya stani aila yanha tattvavadi udupite Krishna deki tahan hoila premomadi. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu next arrived at Udupi, the place of Madhvacharya, where the philosophers known as Tattvavadis resided. There he saw the deity of Lord Krishna and became mad with ecstasy. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Sripad Madhvacharya took his birth near Udupi, which is situated in the South Kannada district of South India, just west of Sayadri. This is the chief city of the South Kannada province and is near the city of Mangalore, which is situated to the south of Udupi. Near the city of Udupi is a place called Madhvacarya, where Madhvacharya took his birth in a Shivali Brahmin dynasty as the son of Madhyageha Bhatt in the year 1040 Shakabda, or 1118 A.D. According to Psalm, he was born in 1160 Shakabda, or 1238 A.D. Srila Prabhupada is here in describing the beautiful place that Sri Madhvacharya appeared, also called Parasuram Kshetra. It is a holy place. After Lord Parasuram conquered all the Kshatriyas a number of times, he performed tapasya and gave everything that he had conquered to Kashyapa Muni and the rishis. And of course, he did not want to ask for anything back that he had already given, but he wanted a place where he could continue his tapasya. So by his great powers as a Shaktivesh avatar, he went to the place that is now South Kannada and Kerala, and he threw his bow into the ocean, and where it landed, the ocean receded, and that place became a new province of land in which he resided for some time. And the very actual mountains in which he resided is the area where Sri Madhvacharya decided to take birth. It was in a small village called Pajaka Kshetra. Therein there was a great Brahmin of the Shivali dynasty. His name was Madhyageha Bhatt. His wife's name was Vedavati. And they had one daughter, but they had no son. 2 children they had, who were both sons, but they both died during their infancy. So this great Brahmin was so anxious to have a great devotee of the Lord to help deliver the world as a son, that every day he would walk to Udupi, to the Ananteshwara temple. In those times there was 2 very ancient temples which were very famous, the Chandramaleshwar and Ananteshwara temples. And from Pajaka Kshetra to Udupi, I believe it's about 30 miles. He would walk every day early in the morning. He would fast. He would offer fervent, intense prayers to the Lord, perform puja. And he did this every single day without fail for 12 years. And one day, after performing this tapasya during a festival, the pujari climbed up onto the flagstaff, the raised platform, and he announced to everyone that the Supreme Lord Ananteshwara has revealed to me a very special truth to be announced, that Vayu, the great and powerful god of the wind, will soon incarnate within this world in order to bestow transcendental knowledge and devotion to all the world. When Madhvacarya Bhatt heard this, he understood that this Vayu avatar would be his own son. In fact, it is explained that at one time, seeing the degraded situation within society, the demigods were praying for the welfare of the people on the earth, and they all approached Lord Vishnu. And Vishnu explained that he would personally send Vayu with all powers and knowledge to deliver the pure message of bhakti. So soon the wife of Madhvacarya Bhatta became pregnant, and on the very auspicious day of Vijay Dasami, the illustrious son was born. And he was so beautiful. His bodily features possessed those of a Mahapurusha. And because of his beautiful features and the great charm in which he attracted everyone's heart, he was given the name Vasudeva. And Srila Prabhupada explains here, there are many wonderful stories about his childhood. Just after his birth, there is of course that period when the mother stays in a secluded place, only with her servants. As soon as that was finished, the parents thought that this son is the mercy of Ananteshwara, and we must reciprocate. We should immediately, before anything else, bring our child to the lotus feet of the Murti of Lord Krishna, and we should offer him at the lotus feet and perform great acts of devotion to show our appreciation to the Lord for this great gift. So they went to the temple of Ananteshwar, and in those days there was no road. You had to go through all jungles and places that were not even safe. And they offered so many wonderful prayers. They offered their child. In fact, there was a wonderful festival. The whole city of Udupi celebrated the birth of this little child, Vasudeva. And by the time the festival was done, it was night, and they had to return. And in the night, there was very great darkness. And as they were traveling through a thick forest, they all began to be haunted by a terrible ghost. And they became very fearful. They were trembling in fear. And then to everyone's great amazement, the ghost spoke in a very thunderous voice and said, generally, my policy is to kill any newborn children. But this child is an avatar of the great Vayu, and he has descended to this earth to do great things. So I bow down to him. And the parents were very happy, relieved, and astounded. When Madhva was just an infant, not even 1 year old, they used to sometimes leave him with his elder sister. And he was just peacefully sitting, and no one was at home, and then he started to cry. So she thought, I don't know what to do with this baby crying. Maybe he's hungry. So she put him near this big mountain of boiled horse gram. You know horse gram, very difficult grains to digest, even for a grown man. It's usually fed to bullock. He was only within a month or 2 old. He ate the whole pile. He ate more than a full-grown bull could eat. Because of course we know that being the avatar of Vayu, he was also an avatar of Hanuman in Bhima. And Bhima's attribute was that he was Brikodar. Prabhupada said Brikodar meant his belly was hungry like a wolf. He could eat any amount of prasad that was required. Another day when he was less than 1 year old, little baby, his parents, they couldn't find him anywhere. So they were searching everywhere. And soon the whole town was looking for him, but they couldn't find him. This was in the morning. He was gone the whole day. Then somehow or other, at the end of the day, they found him. There was a huge, dangerous bull with big hump on his back and massive horns. And Madhva, who was then Vasudev, he was hanging on to the tail of the bull and just swinging to and fro. For 12 hours practically, from early morning till night, he was just hanging from this bull's tail, going wherever the bull was going. Everyone is afraid of such bulls. And when the parents saw this, they were shocked. What a dangerous situation. But they saw him and he was smiling and laughing so happily that they understood that everything must be all right. So somehow or other they removed him from the tail of the bull and embraced him and began to thank God Vishnu for saving their beautiful child. Another time when he was hardly about 3 years old, his father, although a Brahmin, was also a landowner. And one time his father bought some bullock, some oxen, from a wealthy merchant. And somehow or other his crops were not growing very nicely that year, so he had no money to pay this man. And in those days people were very honorable, because according to the Hindu culture, the culture of Sanatana Dharma actually, hospitality toward a guest is one of the most important factors of Grihastha life. If you offend a guest, you offend God. And you cannot eat unless you feed your guests nicely. So this particular man who the debts were owed to, he asked the father of Vasudeva, "You must pay me." He said, "I don't have anything to pay you." He tried everything he could, he just didn't have the money. So he said, "Then I will sit at your doorstep and I will fast, and I will not leave this place until you pay me." Now if a guest fasts, nobody in the family can eat. And he vowed to stay there and fast until he got his money. Meanwhile, the wife already prepared nice prasad, but no one was allowed to eat it. So Vasudeva came to his father and said, "Prasad is ready, let's have prasad." He said, "I'm sorry, I cannot have prasad." "Why you can't have prasad? Invite your guest in." He said, "I owe him money. If I can't pay him money, I cannot eat, and he will not leave. He's fasting." So Vasudeva, always anxious to serve his devotees, who happened to be his father, a very happy little child, he just ran up to that person and said, "Please come with me, I want to show you something." So who could resist the charm of this beautiful little boy? So he went with him, and they went to a tamarind tree. And under that tree there was some tamarind seeds. And little Vasudeva filled his hands with tamarind seeds and said, "Here, I want to give you this." And the man was so charmed by him, he opened his hands and said, "All right, I will take these tamarind seeds from you." And he dropped the tamarind seeds in his hand, and when the man looked in his hands, they were all pure gold, precious coins. Exactly the amount of the debt that was owed to him. So he was very astonished, and he went and told the father, "Thank you very much for paying the debts." And the father said, "I didn't even pay the debts." He said, "Your son, he has given me all these gold coins. This is very nice." And to this day, for those of you who have gone to Pajaka Kshetra, the birthplace of Madhvacharya, the descendant of that original tamarind tree is still there in that place. And it is a holy place that for the past over 700 years pilgrims have gone to worship that tamarind tree, where this great founder Acharya of the Madhva Sampradaya performed this wonderful miracle when he was hardly just a little child. One time, when he was a little boy, he disappeared again. And the parents were looking everywhere for him. And nobody could find him. And then some sadhu came from Udupi, and he said, "Oh, I have seen your son. He was doing puja at Chandramaleshwara temple, and then he was doing puja at Ananteshwara temple, and then he was doing puja in so many other holy places." And they all went, "How he traveled so far? He was not even 3 years old." They asked him, "How did you get here?" He said, "I am not alone." He said, "I came with my associate Vishnu. He took me here." This was the type of natural devotion he had and the type of incredible pastimes he performed. On another occasion, he began his education, and his father began to educate him, and he found his son had such incredible scholarship. Just anything he was taught, he knew that and more. In fact, his father began to teach him certain things, and he started teaching his father things. And his father was a very learned Brahmin. Usually the Upanayana, the sacred thread, is given to a Brahmin when they were about 8 years old, according to the tradition of the time. But he was given when he was only 5 years old. And at this time when he was 5, Srila Prabhupada explains this wonderful pastime. One time he was playing in the forest near Pajaka Kshetra. And at that time, a terrible demon, who actually was from the time of the Mahabharata, his name was Maniman, he appeared as a ferocious serpent. And he had come specifically to kill the child. So as this little 5-year-old boy was playing alone, all of a sudden, out from the forest, this massive snake with his mouth fully opened and his fangs all sharpened just pounced upon the child to kill. He was a terrible, monstrous demon. And little Madhva very effortlessly just pushed the serpent down, and with the toe of his little 5-year-old foot, he crushed the head of the serpent and killed him. Now after that happened, some people saw it, and people gathered around, and they all began to glorify him and praise him. They were so pleased to see what kind of a miracle had just taken place before their eyes. And his mother was at home, several miles away, and she was wondering, why my little child Vasudeva is late? Where is he? And she began to worry about him. So she began to call out, "Vasudev, Vasudev," and not wanting his mother to worry, from that place with one jump he came to the door of his house. Srila Prabhupada explains, when his mother would call, he would come in one jump from wherever he was. First he displayed the strength of Bhima, then he jumped like Hanuman. He was brought to become educated by a very learned scholar, by his father, and his teacher was just so amazed to see the incredible scholarship of this tiny child, and how he was so eager and anxious to read the Vedas, the Puranas, and how he was mastering them when he was hardly 5 years old. One time the son of the teacher had a terrible headache and fever. It appeared he was going to die. It was so painful, and the father was dying just to see his son like this. So little Vasudev, who happened to be an avatar of Vayu, he went up to his little friend and he blew in his ear. And the child immediately became better. And the teacher was very much grateful to him. And after the education was complete, Madhvacharya decided to give his teacher Guru Dakshin. And what was the Guru Dakshin he gave him? Because at that time Shankaracharya's philosophy was the traditional philosophy that practically everyone followed. It was just accepted that this is the truth, what Shankar taught. So he began to explain to his teachers the Vedas, the Vedanta Sutra, Puranas, the Upanishads, with the conclusion of devotion. In this way, as Guru Dakshin, he gave his teacher bhakti to Govinda, and his teacher became a very great devotee. When he was about 8 years old, he decided that he had enough of this material world of sense enjoyment. And he decided he wanted to take sannyas. So he wanted to find a guru who would give him sannyas. And he just left home. And he went searching. And in Udupi he found a very, very great scholar and a very famous guru whose name was Achyuta Preksha. This Achyuta Preksha, his ashram was very famous. Great sadhus and scholars, acharyas from all around would come to stay at his ashram when they were in that area. He was a very noble and very advanced soul. So when little Vasudev came before him, 8-year-old child, requested, "I want to be your student and take sannyas." Achyuta Preksha, upon seeing him and hearing him speaking, he understood this soul is very special. This is certainly the ultimate gift of God that he is giving me a student like this. And he began to train him. And then Vasudev, while he was there, his father was very worried. Where is my son? He is not coming home at all. So he began searching everywhere and everywhere. And finally he found his little effulgent son, 8-year-old child, in the ashram of Achyuta Preksha at the Anandeshwara Mandir in Udupi. So he told his son, "You must come home." Son said, "I have no home. My home is the lotus feet of Krishna." He said, "No, you must come home." He said, "I will not come home. In fact, I will take sannyas." And this was like a thunderbolt to his father's heart, because he was the only son. And by this time, Madhvacarya Bhatt and his wife were quite old, and they needed a son to take care of them. So the father, first of all, began to try to make Madhva feel sorry for him by weeping and crying with a broken heart, saying, "I've done everything for you, I've prayed for you, I've raised you, I've fed you, and now we're old and we need you. You must help us. You cannot just leave us like this. We'll be helpless. We will die." But Madhva was firm in his determination. Krishna will protect you. And when his father saw that the sentiments of tears were not working, he became very angry, started chastising, shouting, yelling. And little Vasudev started chastising and shouting back. And when he saw that that didn't work, finally he fell at the feet of his son, begging him, "Please come home." And little Vasudev, who was very clever, he said, "This is a very auspicious sign." He said, "The only time a grown man bows down to a child is if that child is a sannyasi. So this is a omen that I am seeing, that I should take sannyas." So he didn't know what to do. So he went back home and told his wife that our son wants to take sannyas. He's just a child. And she was very disturbed. She didn't know what to do either. So finally he decided, "I will go and somehow or other get him to come back." But by that time, Vasudev had already left with his guru to go traveling on pilgrimage and preaching. So the father was walking many, many miles, all the way from Udupi to the banks of a river which is close to Mangalore. And there he found Vasudev and Achyuta Preksha camping out, and he came and again he started crying, and then they started having arguments. And finally, in the heat of the argument, little Vasudev, just to show his determination, he took his cloth and he tore it into a kopan and put it on and said, "You see, now I am a sannyasi." And his father was shocked. He didn't know what to do. So then his father finally said that, "We have no son. How can you do this to us?" And Vasudev said, "I will remain a brahmachari in the ashram of my guru, but I will not take sannyas unless you give me your blessings. And I will receive your blessings if you have another son." So he said, "I will discuss this with your mother." So he went back. A little time passed, and his wife was pregnant. And after some months, another son was born. Beautiful son. And then Vasudeva went to his mother at Pajakakshetra, said, now you have another son, now you give me blessings to take sannyas. She started crying. She said, impossible, I cannot give you blessings to take sannyas. You're only 12 years old. This time he was 12. So he said, all right, I will give you two choices. Either you do not give me blessings, and I promise, I vow to you, you will never see my face again for the rest of your life. Or you give me blessings, and you'll see my face as a sannyasi. So ultimately the mother and father decided it's best to see him as a sannyasi than to never see him at all. So they gave their blessings. And this was a glorious, glorious ceremony at the Ananteshwar temple in Udupi. Achyuta Preksha was so proud to have a disciple like this, and the whole town and everyone around came, and there was a big, big festival. And during this festival, the danda was given to the child, and his head was shaved, and all of his beautiful garments were taken off, and he was put on saffron robes, and his spiritual master gave him the name Purna Pragya Tirtha. And because of his great devotion to Lord Krishna, he was later on known as Madhvacharya. So, after taking sannyas, his guru began to teach him the scriptures written by Shankaracharya of the Advaita philosophy, because that was just the accepted knowledge of the time. His guru was very old. He was born and raised with this Advaita philosophy. So as he would explain it, his own pupil, who was only 12 years old, everything he would say, he would just defeat it. And his teacher was, how can I teach you this if everything I say you defeat? So Madhvacharya told him that these books of Shankaracharya are useless. We should not study them. We should study Srimad Bhagavatam. So he convinced his teacher that they should begin to study Srimad Bhagavatam. And Madhvacharya just spent day and night just reading Srimad Bhagavatam and digesting and realizing all of its essences, as well as other scriptures. Especially from his very childhood, he was very fond of the Aitareya Upanishad, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, and he would explain everything according to the conclusions of pure bhakti. In fact, he became a master of the Vedas. And soon he began giving discourses, and more and more and more people were coming. They were fascinated by his interpretations, by his commentaries. And soon masses of people were coming every day to hear this child sannyasi speak. And along with his explanations, he was challenging anything that was not establishing pure unalloyed devotion. And this Achyuta Preksha was so proud of him. He was becoming so famous. He was so empowered. He was defeating all opposition, that he decided to have a very, very auspicious ceremony. The ceremony was to coronate this child as the next acharya of the mat of Achyuta Preksha, like the prince who will become the next king. So he wanted to show the whole world that this child is going to be the disciplic representative of myself in this mat. So there was a big, big festival, and at that time, according to the tradition, Achyuta Preksha bathed him with auspicious ingredients from a conch shell, and he awarded him at that time the name Ananda Tirtha. And soon his challenges became so powerful that any scholar of any religion anywhere around was feeling terror that if we do not defeat him, then he will steal everybody away. He will convert all of our followers. So many of the greatest pundits, the Mayavadis, the Buddhists, they were all coming, and they were elderly, learned, seasoned scholars, and he was only a child, and they were coming and chastising him. What nonsense! And he would just very politely, but very nicely, defeat them all. It is explained that one time 2 Buddhists came, very, very powerful Buddhist scholars. And they challenged him to a debate. And the debate was supposed to last several days. First they spoke, then he tore everything they spoke to pieces philosophically, and then he spoke, and they were speechless, and they said, tomorrow we will come back to defeat you. Now we are tired. So that night, when everyone was sleeping, they ran away, never to show their faces again.